Argentina has collapsed financially again. In the last 100 years, this country has experienced multiple sovereign defaults, hyperinflation, currency crashes, and banking crisis. And yet every time the same pattern repeats. Governments overspend, the debt explodes, money printing accelerates, the currency collapses, and the economy resets. So today, let's break down Argentina's repeat crisis, the blueprint for how an economy slowly slides into collapse, why the cycle keeps repeating, and why economists around the world study Argentina as a warning sign of what happens when financial discipline completely disappears. Here we go. To understand Argentina's economic story, you actually have to go back to the early 1900s. At one point, Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world. In fact, around 1910, Argentina ranked among the top economies globally in terms of wealth per capita. The country had massive agricultural exports, a growing industrial base, and enormous foreign investment. On paper, it looked like the kind of economy that should have continued growing for generations. But over time, the country began adopting policies that slowly destabilized its financial system. The first major shift was government spending. Argentina's government expanded social programs, subsidies, and public employment faster than its economy could sustainably support. At first, that spending was financed through taxation and borrowing, but as deficits grew larger, governments increasingly turned to a tool that has destabilized many economies throughout history: printing money. When governments print money to finance spending, it increases the amount of currency circulating in the economy. And when too much money chases the same goods and services, prices begin to rise. This is inflation. In Argentina's case, inflation became a recurring problem. Through the 20th century, the country experienced waves of rising prices, currency devaluations, and financial instability. But the real breaking point came during the late 1980s. During this period, Argentina entered one of the most severe inflation crises in modern history. Prices weren't just rising, they were exploding. At one point, inflation reached thousands of percent per year. This is what economists call hyperinflation. Under hyperinflation, the value of money collapses so quickly that prices can change daily or even hourly. People rush to spend money immediately because waiting even a few days means losing purchasing power. Savings become meaningless. Wages struggle to keep up, and the entire economic system begins to break down. To stop the crisis, Argentina attempted a radical solution in the early 1990s. The government pegged its currency directly to the US dollar. Under this system, one Argentine peso was fixed at $1. The goal was simple: restore confidence in the currency by tying it to a stable international reserve currency. At first, the plan appeared to work. Inflation dropped dramatically, investment returned, economic growth resumed. But the system had a hidden weakness. For a fixed exchange rate to work long-term, the government must maintain strict fiscal discipline, meaning it cannot run large deficits. Argentina struggled to maintain that discipline. Government spending continued to grow, debt levels increased, and eventually the country ran into a problem. Investors began to doubt that Argentina could maintain the dollar peg. Once confidence started fading, capital began leaving the country. This led to one of the most famous financial collapses in modern history. Hey, real quick, I want to take a quick break and throw this idea out. If you would like to take advantage of the coming crisis in real estate, I put together a package of 4 courses. The Real Estate Crash Course that shows you the cycles of real estate, what to do during a bear market, how to sell the properties, and so much more. The link's down below if you want to take advantage of buying all 4 courses for a crazy price. Now, back to the video. The Argentine crisis of 2001. Banks began running out of dollars. People rushed to withdraw their savings. The government responded by freezing bank accounts. In an attempt to stop the panic, this policy became known as the corralito. Instead of restoring stability, it triggered massive protests and social unrest. Eventually, Argentina defaulted on roughly $100 billion of sovereign debt, one of the largest defaults ever at the time. The peso collapsed, and the country entered another severe economic downturn. But here's the key thing economists study when looking at Argentina. Even after major crises, the underlying cycle tends to repeat. Governments attempt to stimulate growth through spending. Deficits increase, debt expands, confidence weakens, currency pressure builds, and eventually, another financial crisis emerges. In recent decades, Argentina has continued to struggle with high inflation, currency controls, and recurring debt negotiations with international lenders. At times, inflation has exceeded 100% annually, which means prices are doubling roughly every year. For ordinary citizens, that creates enormous uncertainty. Savings lose value quickly. Businesses struggle to plan long term, and foreign investment becomes difficult to attract. This is why Argentina is often used in economic textbooks as a case study, not because collapse happened once, but because the pattern repeated many times. When economists analyze financial crises, they often look for warning signs: rapid debt accumulation, persistent deficits, money printing, loss of investor confidence, currency instability. Argentina's history contains almost every one of those signals, which is why its economic story continues to attract global attention. Because while every country has its own unique circumstances, the underlying mechanics of financial instability are surprisingly similar. When governments lose control of spending, rely too heavily on debt, and begin financing deficits through currency creation, economic stability eventually becomes difficult to maintain. Now, that doesn't mean every country facing debt or inflation will follow the same path, but Argentina shows how financial imbalances can compound over time if they're not corrected early, and that's why economists, investors, and policymakers around the world continue to study Argentina's experience, because understanding how economic systems break down can help identify the warning signs long before the crisis becomes unavoidable. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more videos explaining how financial systems rise, fall, and repeat throughout history, consider subscribing. And if you want to go deeper into global economic patterns, check out the next video on your screen where we break down the early warning signals that often appear before major financial crises. Understanding those signals can help you see economic shifts long before they dominate the headlines. I'll see you in the next one.